Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today. We are going to get started right on time. We noticed a lot of people were able to join early. We appreciate it. Just a quick few housekeeping notes. If you're not muted, please mute yourself. We did turn on the function to mute on entry. So, oops. Thanks for that. Okay. We did request to mute on entry. And then if you have any questions, please use the chat pod for that. You can feel free to enter your questions as we talk. And just make sure, Sharice, we're seeing the slide, not the presenter notes. Great, thank you. And then lastly, this webinar is being recorded. The recording, along with the copy of this PowerPoint, will be posted on our fiscal year 2023 CSBG Webinars page. We will make sure that we share that link in a future DCL. During today's webinar, participants will learn about the status of the fiscal year 2020 and fiscal year 2021 CSBG Annual Reports, as well as the timeline and important updates about the fiscal year 2022 CSBG Annual Reports, how to access the Notice of Awards in grantsolutions.gov, and we'll share some final thoughts from Sharice. And with that, I will hand it over to Sharice.
Thank you, Monique, and good afternoon, everyone. We're so happy that you are joining us today as we kick off our annual reporting preparation webinars. We've heard from you, and we believe these webinars are helpful as we think about data collection. As you can see, one of the quotes that I want to remind us of are that data are just summaries of thousands of stories. Tell a few of those stories to help make the data meaningful. And so we always are talking about data. We're talking about the quality of data, collecting data, and we do that best through our annual report system. There are many data points and many ways we collect data, but the annual report is one of our primary instruments that we use to collect data. And we want you to know that it tells thousands of stories if we do it really well. We want to have confidence in our data. We want our data to help us to make decisions, tell stories not only at a local level, but at a state level and a federal level. So in this session today, we'll be focusing on how we report, the road to the annual report, and resources and tools that we plan to provide along the way to make sure you're successful in telling those data stories and that we're more successful as a network of telling our stories to the public as well as to other stakeholders in this work. As we move to the next slide, I also want to say you may not have heard about this, but we're going to talk about PEAAK. It's one of our continuous improvement strategies. And we believe that PEAAK will help us all to thinking about PEAAK and thinking about the meaning of PEAAK will help us all to really, really understand the importance of data. I just want to say as we move toward PEAAK that I've learned a lot from the state lead agencies over the last 2.5 years. One thing that I have learned is that you are very clear on what your expectations are from the federal office. And you've asked us to be responsive, to be timely and clear communicators, to keep you all engaged. You've asked us to commit to consistent accountability across the network. You've asked us to really, really make sure that we are hearing you and seeing you. So OCS is taking even a broader look to make sure that you know we see you and we hear you. And some of the ways that you know that our communication has increased. Some ways you know that we're having these types of sessions to make sure we're all successful in reporting data. But at the same time that we hear each other and we see each other, we all know it's important for us to use our state plans as a way to share information about the great work you're doing and the great work you plan to do. Our annual report kind of validates what was in the state plans because it shows you how you were able to accomplish those goals and outcomes. And so we know that we're always figuring out ways to make our data stronger, to tell data stories, to validate what we've been able to accomplish, and really to boast in the success of the network in regards to the work that you do as state lead agencies and the work that your eligible entities do in the communities. For today's webinar, we see you through annual reporting. And we really want to make sure that you understand that good annual reporting allows us to submit stronger reports to Congress. It allows us to include even more information about the work that you do and the work that is done at the community level in the OCS Annual Report. It allows us to make sure that we are internally using that data to make data decisions, to plan training. Conference attendance should be driven by, and workshops should be driven by what we learn from our data. So we really, really want to focus on continuous improvement. And for the purposes of today, we're thinking about continuous improvement through the lens of the annual report. A little bit more about PEAAK. PEAAK is all about performance, evaluation, accountability, accessibility, and knowledge. If you were at the most recent conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota, you heard us talk about PEAAK. You heard us talk about the performance management website. You heard us talk about the performance management work group that we're setting up. Just things that we're doing in order to make sure that we focus on continuous improvement through our needs assessment. We focus on continuous improvement through our ACSI surveys. You also, the organizational standards and accountability standards, and some of the guidance in Roma speaks to this performance. How do we do our jobs really well, and how do you all support your eligible entities in doing a really good job at all of their work? And then one question one may say is, with the community needs assessment, does it really drive plans? Does it really help us to know what we need to focus on at a state level and a community level? So PEAAK is really all about performance, why we're doing what we're doing. Then we look at evaluation. And we know evaluation is about trying to determine if we're meeting the goals that have been set. And all of the tools listed below evaluation on this slide speak to ways in which you evaluate whether or not, which you assess, maybe more than evaluate, where you assess whether or not those tools, the organizational standards, accountability measures, and other tools and oversight actually help you to tell your story, help you to make sure that your CSBG role is being fulfilled through your activities, and also the tools that you can use in order to have some level of confidence in the work that you're doing. All of this stuff has been laid out to the network and to you all through many years of concerted efforts to really improve data collection and performance of our CSBG program, of CSBG, so that we can tell the story. Then with accountability, from a federal to state perspective, monitoring is a big part of what we do. The monitoring that we do now is really helping us to better understand how we can work together to make sure we have the most successful CSBG network. Monitoring opens up those opportunities for us to do that. And also, in regards to the CSBG state plan, that is another opportunity to tell what the problems are, the challenges are, and how you're going to address them. And accountability also speaks again to the CSBG Annual Report, which should line up with all of your goals and plans that are documented in your state plans. And then we've added a concerted effort to also make sure that we're reviewing those plans in a very comprehensive way, the state plan and the annual report. And our goal is that you will see evidence that we're providing more feedback, we're having more conversations with you about this, because this is the way that we are able to provide that oversight, meet those oversight responsibilities and accountability expectations, so that we know that we're all on the same page, we're working toward the goal, we're carrying out the law, and we're also using peer-to-peer learning and sharing of information to just build accountability and also to make sure that we're successful as a unit. Accessibility, making sure that we have the information to tell the story. And complete the report to Congress, and that it will inform even how we stage and set up the performance management website. What is the information that you need to have? How can we make sure you have access to that information? I really believe once we're fully able to launch our performance management website, and I say ours because it belongs to us, I think you're going to see the power of good quality data. You're going to see the power of telling the story through data, and it's just going to make all of our lives much easier as we have to hold ourselves accountable to talk about the great work of CSBG and why CSBG is so important. And then finally, when we look at PEAAK, we look at knowledge. Building knowledge is important. How do we learn from each other? How do we implement some of the promising practices that are demonstrated through some of our reporting. How do we talk about transformation and share that information across the network? And once again, how do we put that information in a public facing mode so that others can see and hear about the great work of the CSBG network? State administrators, you play such an important role in this. That's why we want to take the time to make sure we provide you with good information, with tools, and also give you opportunities to ask questions and to provide us with feedback, because we're only as successful as we all focus on PEAAK. You know, how do we continue to improve? How do we continue to move toward even stronger evidence that we're doing good work? And how do we tell those stories in a way which is based on quality data, feeling confident in our data, and actually showing that our data reflects what we're really doing to change the lives of individuals, families, and communities. So I believe it's important for the federal office and the state lead agencies to think about goals that we want to set together. This is probably one of the areas in which we really need to focus on the most. You can see here, you will see that in 2021, 45% of all grant recipients submitted, and I'm talking about the state lead agencies and the tribes and the territories, submitted their annual reports in a timely manner, 45%. Now we have another due date that's coming up, and we want to see these numbers grow. And let me tell you a little bit more about why this is so important. It actually takes, and you're going to see it in a few minutes, it takes a while to receive the data, to be able to make sure the data, that we resolve any questions we have about the data that's submitted through the annual report. That is a lengthy process. And as you all know, we haven't had a report published on the website to Congress in a while because it takes so long to get the data in. Getting the data in is your responsibility, and making sure that you have the resources to submit your data successfully is our responsibility. And when we take those two pieces and we put it together, if we provide you with the information, the timeline, the support you need, and the tools, there should not be a reason why we can't continue to grow in the timely submission of our annual reports. So you can see the targets that we have set in order to continue to grow, because when we can get our annual report submitted, we can provide you feedback through the review memo. You can respond to those items. We are better equipped to write those reports to Congress. We're better equipped in a timely fashion. We can be included in the OCS annual report without delaying it. And really, we get to tell our story. And we all agreed from the beginning, I hope, that data is a story. And so when we don't focus on, when the federal office doesn't focus on giving you the tools, the information, and the timelines, that impacts our ability to do the work. And then when you don't focus on submitting information in a timely fashion or requesting technical assistance along the way, it also prohibits us from meeting some of our goals. So I ask that as you listen to the series of webinars that are going to be offered regarding annual reporting, think about how you want to show up for the network, how you want to show up for the CSBG, the work that we do, so that we can tell our data story. And I'm asking you to join us in actually, if you didn't submit by March 31st last year, you have an opportunity to do it this year. And we would like to see that growth over time. You know, 100% is great, but being realistic, there could be technical challenges and reasons why you're not able to do it. But most importantly, we're here to provide you technical assistance, just like we did throughout this year. We're here to make sure you have access to your questions, information in a timely fashion. So when we talk about expectations and sharing information, we're going to try our best to do what we've told you we're going to do, but we're asking you also to join us by doing your part. So I'm going to turn it over to Monique. She's going to explain that process of data collection just a little bit more. So if we have new people, this will be your first time being introduced to this. But if we have some of our older or more seasoned state administrators, you'll also have a refresher. So we're excited about the course that we're setting. We know that we can do it if we all just focus and pay attention to what's going on. And we know that I hope you know you can ask us questions, you can request technical assistance, you can push us a little bit, but let's work really, really hard together to meet that March 31st date and to take full advantage of the resources that we're able to provide you. But we just need you to ask, and then we'll follow up and make sure you have what you need in order to be successful in submitting your annual reports. Such an important report, but the only way we can make these reports meaningful is that you join in with us and try to meet those deadlines that you're going to learn more about throughout this webinar. Monique?
Thank you, Sharice. As Sharice mentioned, I am going to briefly discuss the annual report submission process. There are a few steps in it. We do believe that understanding this will strengthen you as you're submitting revisions for fiscal year 2020 and fiscal year 2021, as well as submitting your new reports for fiscal year 2022. For new administrators, some of these terms that I use may be new or unfamiliar, but we will have future webinars that will go into this more. We'll delve into these terms a little bit more and what each step of this process it really means, but this is intended to be more of an overview. As I'm talking about this, if you have a question, feel free to enter it into the chat, and I will be trying to monitor that as I'm speaking, and we'll make sure that we answer all questions at the end of the presentation. So the first step is receiving the smart forms or state database. This is where modules 2, 3, and 4 start, as module 1 does not have a smart form or state database because it allows direct data entry into the online data collection system. Once the eligible entities receive the smart forms or access to the state database, they should begin immediately submitting their data. Now, it's important to remind everyone that these are the mechanisms for submitting the data, but really and truly, as soon as your fiscal year is starting, eligible entities should have a way of collecting and maintaining their data so that once they receive the smart forms or access to the state database, they're able to submit that information to you as a state administrator. Once the state receives the data from the eligible entities, they should then review that data. And once they're confident that that data is complete based on either prior feedback you received or inconsistencies that you're seeing, then you'll export that data to an XML. Again, XML might be a new term if you're newer to this process, and we'll go into that a little bit more in one of our later webinars. But the XML is what allows the state to then upload this data into OLDC to start their submission process to OCS. So once you have all the smart forms or state database data exported into the XML, you'll upload the XMLs for each CSBG eligible entity from your state into the online data collection system or into OLDC via grantsolutions.gov. And this is where module 1 comes into place because now you are in the Grant Solutions or online data collection system. Now, no, it's not linear. You can start completing module 1 as soon as it's available, as soon as OLDC opens up. But we did want to point out that there is a slightly different process for module 1, again, because states directly enter that data into OLDC and then submit the state level data by clicking a submit button. And then for modules 2, 3, and 4, again, you have to upload the XML into OLDC. And then once you upload the data into, upload all the XMLs into OLDC, then you have to submit the aggregated state level data and local level data to OCS by submitting the state level form. Now, this might sound confusing if you haven't done this process before. And again, I'll reiterate that we will have a webinar that focuses solely on this portion of the process of how to submit that state level form to OLDC. This is something that we've noticed that some states have forgotten to go back and click that last submit button. So again, you're uploading the XMLs and then submitting the state level form. Once we've received the data from your state, we'll start our reviews. There's a quality assurance review and there's a federal review, and then we send a review memo with the feedback to you as a state administrator. And once you've received that feedback, you'll review that information, and we'll start going into our finalization process. You'll respond to the review memo. One thing is that you should be working with the eligible entities to review the feedback that we send you and confirm its accuracy, provide any explanation that you have for maybe why it's accurate or inaccurate, and then whether or not you need to actually update that data point. And then you'll work with eligible entities to repeat those steps of updating the smart forms, re-exporting the XML, re-uploading that XML to OLDC, and again, that final submission to OCS by submitting the state level form. We'll then accept the final submission in OLDC, and you'll receive an email confirming that we have received your final report and that we're accepting it. Once we have received the data from all the states, we'll then start telling the CSBG story, and that will go into the OCS Annual Report, which we released the first ever OCS Annual Report in fiscal year 2021, as well as the CSBG Report to Congress and the CSBG Performance Management website. So it is so important that you're reviewing the feedback that we provide, and you're making those updates to your data so that the information that's in the Performance Management website and the Report to Congress and the Annual Report is as valid and complete as possible. So I will pause for a few minutes to see if anyone has any questions about this process of submission. We do think it's really important that everyone understands it. And so I will take a quick pause. I do see one question. Yes, the PowerPoint will be available, which we'll talk about that later in this webinar. And yes, there will be a Word version of Module 1, which I'll also discuss more later in this webinar. Okay, so I'm not seeing any additional questions come in at this time. So I hope that means everyone gets it, or you guys are waiting for the next webinars where we'll go into these a little bit more. But again, if you have any questions while I continue to speak, feel free to type them into the chat. I will be monitoring that as we go. So now to discuss the status of the fiscal year 2020 and fiscal year 2021 CSBG Annual Reports. The fiscal year 2020 CSBG Annual Report, we are at a 17% finalization rate. That means that the CSBG grant recipients, which is you as the state administrators, have submitted any revisions as applicable, and OCS has reviewed that and accepted within Grant Solutions. Over the next 2 weeks, you are going to receive emails from your program specialist about what we need from you in order to close out fiscal year 2020 by December 31st. That means you might have to hit that submit button. We just need to verify one last data point with you. And we really, really appreciate any responsive, just being as responsive as you can be so that we can close this out. We really want to close it out on July 31st, but we haven't reached that point yet. So we will do an administrative closeout of all of 2020 on December 31st, as long as it is submitted, and then we'll send you an acceptance letter. One thing of note here is that even though we're accepting it now, if we are noticing any major anomalies or outliers as we draft the congressional report and load data into the performance management website, we may contact you again to update that data point. So while we are closing it out so we can begin focusing on 2021, and allow you to submit 2022 as well, we are still reviewing that data to ensure that we're providing the most accurate and valid data that we can to Congress and as well as the general public, and for your own use as well. As for fiscal year 2021 CSBG Annual Report, the quality assurance review is complete. The federal review began this week, and we're anticipating it ending on January 31st, 2023. We will send you your review memo by January 31st. We're asking that you respond within 30 days of receipt. If you need training technical assistance, if you're having a hard time, responding, if you're having questions about the comments, please, please, please reach out to your program specialist. We will set up a training. We will work with you. Our colleagues, NASCAS, are also going to join us on these training and technical assistance calls, because we want to make sure that we're helping you resubmit this data and review these data points. This is a team effort, and we consider all of ourselves as part of the team. So we do want to make sure that we are available to you. And our goal is to finalize the fiscal year 2021 CSBG Annual Report by April 30th of 2023. We know that this is around the same time that you're submitting 2022, but we really do believe that we need to close it out so we can fully focus on fiscal year 2022 in the summer. And again, the one thing we do ask is that you're just letting us know of any complications or issues you're running into as you're responding to your review memo. Now going into the timeline and important updates about fiscal year 2022, the CSBG Annual Reports. A quick review of the timeline. We do have some webinars coming up, so we'll go into these a lot more in those webinars in January. But the smart form release will be completed by today. So if you haven't received it yet, please expect to receive it today as long as you have submitted your complete fiscal year 2021 CSBG Annual Report. And if you don't receive it by today, please contact your program specialist and we'll make sure that we work with NASCAS to get your smart forms over to you. OLDC will be available January 2nd, 2023. We will release an announcement once OLDC is available. The due date for the 2022 CSBG Annual Report is March 31st, 2023. And again, reiterating, we'll be scheduling some calls with some states, but if you would like some training technical assistance prior to the due date, please reach out to your program specialist. We'll be including the contact information at the end of this presentation. It's also available on our website for you to request some specialized training and technical assistance as it relates to the OCS Annual Report. I want to remind everyone what a complete submission includes. That is your CSBG Annual Report, modules 1, 2, 3, and 4, CSBG Cares Annual Report, modules 1, 2, and 4, and the CSBG Disaster Supplemental Annual Report as applicable. Again, with the CSBG Annual Report for Module 3 is optional, but we do encourage everyone that if you have some community level transformations, please submit them. And collectively, the 3 of these reports are referred to as the CSBG Annual Reports. There are no changes to CSBG Annual Reports forms this year, so it will look similar to what you submitted last year. While there are no changes to the actual forms themselves, we do know that for most states, this is the final year of reporting for CSBG Cares. This does depend on your state reporting period, as well as whether or not you're a small state. So the state reporting periods, you can either report on state fiscal year of July 1st through June 30th. This is, of course, related to modules 2 and 4. 2, 3, and 4. Module 1 must be reported based on the federal fiscal year, which is October 1st through September 30th. And then there are states that also report on the calendar year of January 1st through December 31st. Small states are a subset of smaller states subject to the minimum allotment and maximum allotment provisions. This is directly related to the CARES Act funding that we released in 2020. And I think my colleague Nikki will put the link to this DCL in the chat if anyone just needs to verify whether or not they're a small state. I think by now everyone knows if they are a small state or not. So CSBG Cares final reporting for states that report on the federal fiscal year and the calendar year. This applies to all states that report based on these 2 timeframes that you see on the screen. This is your final year of reporting for Cares, unless you are a small state. This fiscal year 2022 annual report is due March 31st, as we said earlier. If you see your name, your state on this screen, that means that you're entering your final year of reporting for Cares. If you do not report based on the federal fiscal year or calendar year, please let me know and we'll make sure that you have the right information for whether or not this is your final reporting. But this is based on what the information that you've submitted to us about your reporting period for modules 2, 3, and 4. For states that operate on a state fiscal year and small states, your final report will be fiscal year 2023, which is due March 31st, 2024. For fiscal year 2022 reporting, please report as normal. Please report based on your normal reporting period. So for those states that operate on a state fiscal year, I just realized those dates are wrong. We'll make sure we update this before we share the presentation. That should be July 1st through June 30th. We do understand that your first quarter of fiscal year 2023 is July 1st through September 30th, and that will be reported in the fiscal year 2023 report. So you'll have 3 extra months of reporting, while the small states, you still have a little bit more time, or the eligible entities within small states still have a little bit more time. So your final reporting for these 2 will be fiscal year 2023 due on March 31st, 2024. And we will talk about this more and what we're anticipating with that. Again, if you do not report on a state fiscal year, if your state reports based on the federal or calendar year, but you see your state on this slide, please let us know and we'll make sure that we categorize you correctly. CSBG Cares final reporting. It is a reconciliation of your CSBG Cares. So you're thinking about what are your final expenditures, what are the resources that you received that contributed to your care services for this final year, and your final Cares individual and family services. We will be talking about this in more detail in January. But really, when you're thinking about this, look at your reports across the 3 years and making sure that you did report on all of your expenditures, all of your resources, and all of the services that you provided specifically using your CARES funds. For the CSBG Disaster Annual Report, only required for states who are eligible for Phase 3 CSBG Disaster Relief Supplemental Funds. Again, you'll report as normal, and this is the final report if you expended all of your funds based on your reporting period. So there's only 4 states that need to report disaster this year. That's Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Texas. North Carolina, you do report on based on the state fiscal year according to your reporting. So we will reach out to you to discuss whether or not this will be your final report for disaster. This does kind of end the updates that we have about your annual reporting. If you have any questions based on the information I shared, feel free to start entering them into the chat now. I'll make sure that we review them and answer all the questions at the end. But again, we will have some detailed webinars that are going to be focusing on this final reporting for CARES and disaster in the upcoming month, in January. There is a new feature available in Grant Solutions. You're now able to access your notice of awards directly. And to do so, you should have this new experience homepage. That is how Grant Solutions refers to it. If you do not have this, let us know. We'll make sure that we get you the TNTA that you need to access it this way. Right now, OCS does not have this view, so we are working with Grant Solutions to make sure that we provide you the best technical assistance in order to access this view. However, when you log into Grant Solutions, you should be able to see your grants list. And you should have, and I know this picture is blurry. I'd asked Grant Solutions to send me this, and this is what they were able to send. I'm asking them to send me updated images so we can have this as clear as possible for you. And we'll also send some other links about video trainings and things of that nature. But when you log in, you'll see your grants list, and you should see active grants for your active grants. And this little, where the little arrow's pointing, it will either show as active or closed. You can't really see it in this picture, but that's what it shows. If you do not see any grants, that means that there is no grants assigned to your account. Or if you see the wrong state or the wrong grant assigned to your account, that also means that you need to have your account updated. So if that's the case, please email me and Nikki. We will send you the instructions to have your account updated to make sure that you have the right access. But you should be seeing at minimum your 2022 or 2023 active grant. And if you're not seeing that, or if you're seeing the wrong state, please let us know, and we will send you those instructions to provide to update your view and your access. Now, if you do have this view and you want to access your notice of award, you would click your grant number, which on here is showing us 2201 NH10-2. This is not real data, so what I'm showing you guys is not anyone's real information. Well, the grant number might be real, but this is not real data. You'll click on that grant number, and then once you click on the grant number, it'll take you to your award page. Again, I'm not sharing anyone's real information. This is just an image that they created using fake data. And then you'll see that there's 2 places for you to access your notice of award. So you can either click view notice of award up here on the left-hand side, or under grant details, you can click notice of award. Again, if you're not seeing this view, or if you're seeing the wrong state, or don't have access to the notice of award, it just means that we have to make sure that your state is assigned to you. So just contact Nikki and myself, and we will make sure that we send you the appropriate instructions to have your grant assigned to you. There's some final thoughts. On the screen, you can see your program specialists. We have Jessica for Region 8, Renika for Regions 1 and 2, Isaac for Region 6, Jamia for Regions 4 and 7. Jane, who is our communications and correspondence liaison, as well as Andrew for Region 3, Catherine for Regions 4 and 9, and Jake for Region 10. And all this information is available on our website under federal staff contacts. And then for any OLDC technical assistance, including making sure that you have the right access, you can contact myself and Nikki. Our information is on the screen, as well as is available on our webpage. Last new thing, we do now have the CSBG events calendar available on our ACF website. It does list upcoming webinars and how to register for them and any associated links with those. We'll be updating that as it goes, but right now you can see information as it relates through the end of January. Which also brings me to our next webinar, which will be January 4th at 3 o'clock. And that's where we'll first start discussing how to prepare for the CSBG Annual Report, including future reporting and how to submit your final CSBG Cares Annual Report. And with that, we'll see if we have any questions. And if not, I'll hand it over to Sharice. So the only 3 questions I'm seeing right now is, will a new Word version of Module 1 be made available, and when will that be? That Word version will be available next week. Look out for the action transmittal, again, reminding everyone of your requirements for submitting the CSBG Annual Report. The PowerPoint will be available by tomorrow on our events page as well as the webinars page. And the next question I see, for states that use a statewide system, was there any additional information for the XML? Has this already been released to the vendor portal? Yes, the only information that should have changed for that XML is your grant number and the potential DUNS number, but the DUNS numbers haven't changed. So that should be available through the vendor portal as we speak. And if it's not, please let us know and we'll work with NASCAS to make sure it's available by the end of this week. Sharice, I'm not seeing any more questions right now, Sharice, but if any more come through, we'll answer them, but I am going to hand it back to Sharice for now.
Thank you, Monique, and thank you for a great job in sharing information regarding the annual report. As I said initially, this is an opportunity for us to continue to perform at the highest level that we can perform, peak performance. It also is about paying attention to how important our data is, and also using the federal office and NASCAS to ask questions, and we'll provide you training and technical assistance. We'll answer your questions. We are here from you. That is our role. And so I know you're not shy. I'm hoping that this information, you have a chance to go back and look at it, and it'll actually kind of process the information, and it may lead to questions, but we're here and we're committed to supporting you. I know that the future webinars will be just as informative, although they may be more specific to a specific activity. So I just want you to know we're here. We want to answer your questions. We want to hear from you. And let's work hard this year. March 31st is quickly approaching us. We really want to make sure that you submit your reports by March 31st, and then we can start that process that Monique described, to be able to assess our data, provide feedback to you all, and so that we'll be prepared to share it and tell the CSBG story. I think there is at least 2 questions, Monique, that I'm seeing pop up in the chat. So if you want to answer those, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your questions. And let's do this together, because I know that we can. The Community Action Network can do anything. The CSBG Network can do anything. And this is something that we can do if we just add a little more intention to it. So thank you. Monique?
Thank you. So I do see one more question, and it's asking, do we have expectations for the release of the 2020 or the 2021 CSBG Annual Report? I'm assuming that's in reference to the report to Congress or the congressional report. If that's the case, that is why it's so important that we finalize this data. We do need to finalize the data in order to release the annual report. So our hope is that if we can finalize the data by December 31st, we will start working with NASCAS to draft that congressional report and make sure that we're keeping you guys updated with anticipated timelines. But the first thing is to finalize that data. So as your program specialists are reaching out to you this week and next week, please be responsive. Even if it's just to say, hey, I've received your email, I'm looking into this, even that helps. So please be looking out for those emails. They'll be coming out within the next week or so that we can wrap this up and, start drafting that congressional report. And if that's not what you meant, please feel free to clarify.
And Monique, I think it's important. Any questions that we have in the chat, if we did not answer them, we will make sure that we pay attention as we close out this webinar in case you add something before we end.
I'm not seeing any more. Yeah, so we were asked to include our email, so I'll quickly add that in the chat. But we very much thank you guys for joining. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to your program specialist or myself and Nikki.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.